Hey you guys, it's MJ from I UNPLUG. I'm unlisted again this morning because I'm still clearing the calf vibrashe across the donashe, and so I'm not enjoying the live chats quite as much because I get coughing fits and then I'm like, sorry guys, and then it's like the shame spiral of the empath, like feeling insecure. And anywho, like, does any of that matter? Not at all. This morning, however, and it is a theme on a lot of the astro channels right now, relationships. So it's like a lot of us, I think, and I really feel intuitively, and there's reasons for this, even beyond intuish, but I feel like this energy review is almost generational, and that obviously is a sweeping generalization. However, I feel like this is related to this whole, obviously the shift, because that's all I talk about, the paradigm shift, but it's like every aspect. So we know, we talk about this here, that like, well, the economy is collapsing and the food, the food companies and all of this, we're having to really completely transform and structurally rebuild, or even structurally put a better foundation down to build a new world in greater harmonic resonance with the natural bioresonance field of the planet, which is the plant, which is the one plant, which the cycle of a plant is really, I would say, and this plant specifically on this planet is like it shows us how to make it work, or how to do it. And like our trees have the seasons, our own existence in these bodies also has a sort of tree-like existence, or a flower, like where we have cycles and we birth cycles, i.e. springtime, the blossom, and then we die out. We let go of those cycles, right? There's more nuggets in here, and it's this could obviously, I think I put in the title, relationships, love and sex, but it's like all of this awareness around how the 3D construct of the relationship has a lot is based on there's a dominant program of lack and limitation around the Disney construct, obviously, because what we have here is like which many of us on the spiritual path know this, but it's like of course, it's an external seeking. It's an external, oh, you'll complete me, right? And what I'm sitting with is just this continual, like, facing each being in the presence awareness, like in the moment, and being present with all of the feelings. And so I'm really sitting with the falling in love construct, and how without the awareness we can get swept into the love as a construct because how the dominant programming would tell us that now all my dreams will come true, like fall in love and live happily ever after. There's that programming is very dominant. And then, okay, so that's like a love ha vibrashe, so lovely, right? Live happily ever after, find your Prince Charming, all this kind of stuff. But then what I'm getting is like, okay, well, that's obvious that our parents, and then increasingly so, there's divorces, and this whole idea of love and marriage isn't sustaining itself, right? Like, it's not, and that was something, like, that's part of, again, it's also paradoxical, right? Because our lives can appear quite charmed, and then, but actually for us it was traumatic, right? But I was one of the only kids growing up who's in my school anyway, and then amongst my certain kind of group of friends, there is a lot, large chunk, if not pretty much since I moved from a small, very small, sort of industrial town in Canada, in Ontario. And then at the age of 11, it was that year that I turned 12 that I became vegetarian. But that was the year, so I was 11 when we moved to a new town, and we were at new schools. And I don't know if any of you have that experience, but when you're a child, those can be pretty, but I was obviously like a sensitive, so I would like, if I had to go to like an unfamiliar dance class to replace some class that I missed, I can remember, I'm having a memory now of like remembering me just like crying in the car to mom, because I'm like, I don't know anyone there, and like I'm scared, and and like obviously it was totally fine, right? Um but yeah, I think we have so I'm using these words a lot lately: binary and paradox. And this idea that like it's all mirrored and flipped, and that you're only the ever one perceiving it. And I'm really curious about, by the way, I feel like I've perhaps jumped over something, but that's fine. Basically, how much is really divine and how much is actually put on us? Oh yeah, and that's what I was saying. So from a young age, once my parents got divorced, when around the ages like 5 and 6, and then we moved to a bigger city when I was like 11 or 12, and that was kind of some of my earlier experiences of like feeling shame in public, like to the external world, i.e. school and like my new group of friends, about the fact that my mom was a single mom. So we didn't talk about it, and like for a while I like didn't want to bring people back to our house because we didn't live in a 2-story, we lived in beautiful homes, but we didn't, it wasn't the same as like the two mom and dad kind of cookie cutter, which obviously on some, as I share this story with you, I'm like, wow, and I chose all that for some reason, right? Because it's so relevant, because this is such a privileged demographic of people who are now all lawyers and doctors and incredibly successful in the world, and that obviously pulls into question my own life path and how different we are and how unique we are. And I'm obviously a woman. Guys, could you tell? I'm not sure. Uh, and I'm of an age where people in society, we talk about that kind of biological clock, or, according to society standards, I should have wanted to be having babies by now. And one of my main priorities in my life should have been having a husband or getting married. And having kind of gone through some brutal betrayal, i.e. like the typical empath narcissistic stuff. And I don't need to go into great detail about that, but having kind of survived that, and then now in this new cycle of energy, and I'm just really, really exploring from as much of an open mind and an open heart as possible of like what's really true when it comes to how we build and create loving relationships. And does it really need to fit into any specific model? And I'm aware that I think that's the point, is that it doesn't, but we're quite heavily programmed to think that it does. So we're pretty heavily programmed to think that someone's going to come along and make everything better. Or so like straight up, like I think there's energies, and this is where we do want to communicate and share when stuff comes up with our community, with our spouses, with our partners, and all of that kind of stuff, because these are edgy things. Our sexuality, it's edgy stuff. it's, and again, all of it kind of roots back right down into this divide and conquer. And divide and conquer ultimately is the perpetuational energetic tactic that keeps people in enslavement ultimately, because as long as we need to survive here, so for women, a lot of the karmic backlog is like literally, if we don't find a man, you end up a whore on the street, or what have you. Now, this is obviously karma, this is backlog stuff, right? But it's certainly very real in as far as like how women treat one another, how we maybe play games, control our own control games and sexual games around that. And I don't have, you guys, this is just how it rolls here. Like, I don't have answers around this stuff. I'm just aware of what I'm sitting with as I clear these suffering patterns and move into a greater sovereignty, a greater sense of love and compassion for the self, and a sense of integrity in all of my relationships, right? And so there's no shame, there's no hidden aspect necessarily until there is. And usually the way I'm looking at that, it comes through a socially shamed desire that we think we're not allowed to have, or we think we're da-da-da-da, or da-da-da. And so when we hide, that's when the relationship dynamic starts to get distorted. So here's what I'm getting. It's like the truth of it. It's like we really can create our own reality. And when we rise enough into the heart space, it's almost like there's such clarity, compassion, and intuitive knowing that we no longer ultimately enter into the codependent relationships that end in brutality, right? That end in pain. However, we recognize and honor the fact that actually all of the pain, all of our relationships, all of the love that we feel is teaching us about our sovereignty. And in a weird thing, it freaks me out. And because I think, oh my God, am I just a woman that wants to like just be on her own, you know? Because I watched a single mom who did that, who was just pretty much a single lady for like 30 years, right? And that kind of freaks me out. At the same time, so this is another thing that I'm aware of, is like connecting with like enough minds that the kind of life. So for a woman, to not base her entire existence on the man that she's with, and to just be in her sovereignty and to live her life, we don't have to be slaves. We don't have to be submissive. We don't have to like do his bidding, right? He's his own creator. And so like, I think that's quite a relevant piece in New Paradigm, is that really it's conscious creatorship in unity. And that means the sovereign self. That means that all parties are sovereign, independent, responsible creators. And then how we come together is a much more above board. And I gotta say, having grown up Catholic and worked through a lot of body shame stuff, I'm amazed at my own self of like what's happening and how things are expanding out in as far as what is the potential. Like, what can we really have? What can we really create? How exciting could life be? So when you start to push those envelopes, you start to realize when it's all held in love, when it's all held in integrity, there's fucking nothing to be ashamed of. And yet, collectively, there are shame labels, right? Everywhere. And this is why it's so fucked up. There's like a collective imprint of shame around our bodies and sex. And yet, because it's such a natural and beautiful thing and something that we should all be taught properly, and we should all openly talk about it and be like, my bits are feeling funny, or, oh, that feels really fantastic. Like, sex really doesn't need to be a shameful, bad thing. And yet, socially speaking, it's so like, and then that's how I think we have these potentially, not always, but potentially insidious and like kind of corrupted things, like, and again, I'm not talking about healthy, creative, sexual creation in film, which one would call pornography. That's making film as film, and creating and sex in the light is very beautiful. But female disempowerment and or worse in the world of pornography because of the shadow of a society that doesn't talk about it. That's kind of where I'm coming from, is that we all have a different, just like money, sex is another thing that triggers the arsehole out of people, including myself. I had a huge, like, activation in 2017, and then it all just started to come undone, basically. Like, and so here we are, and I'm meeting you guys, like, where I am in my life, in as far as, one, developing clear and, like, whole relationships that we can talk to. So that was, like, a big piece. Now attracting people that, like, actually understand what I'm talking about, right? And, like, and two, making complete loving resolution with all aspects of self, meaning the past, the now, and the future. But then again, with internet as well, there's a lot more, like, unknown variables sometimes when you're dealing with people, when you're dealing with community. And then new paradigm, creative expression. It's like, how do we find ourselves in the world and then just have healthy relationships? And to me, healthy doesn't necessarily have a definable parameter like monogamy or marriage or, you know, I don't know what other people think about that stuff, but, like, oh yeah, okay, so this is exactly what a healthy relationship looks like. Because straight up, I'm one of these women who's realizing, like, I think, and this is where my peeps and I, we talk about, you know, travel as a foundational thing of our lives, and building. Like, that's to me coming together co-creatively with another being in love, is like building stuff and or a family, right? Creating. And that's a really beautiful thing. And that, in resonance and in an alignment, I think really does set the tone for building healthy relationships across the board, which have longevity regardless of society's parameters of what that should look like. So I have my place and he has his place, and we meet up and do stuff together and we co-create and da-da-da-da. And maybe there's other couples that there's co-creation with. I don't know. I'm just like, you know, I'm starting to acknowledge how far I've come and how weird, it's fucking weird as well. Like, it's weird for me to be, like, sharing and talking about this stuff and not feeling shame. Nope. Not feeling like, oh no, the scary boogie sex people are gonna come and get me. Like, a lot of Catholic people feel like there's huge shame and guilt around that stuff. So you guys, that's disgusting. I'm like, I don't want to cough in your face, but don't mind me if I just snot a whole bunch down my face for you guys, because I know how much you love it. So you guys, I think that's it for me. That's a little noodle fest for you. I'm going to be cracking on with the edit today for Ultra Vegan Love. It's Saturday, and I would really, 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 really love to basically finish editing all of my interviews. They make me really excited, and it's really good to share the different stories, because I gotta say, now that I'm over halfway through the edit of the interviews specifically, now if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, I have all these featured businesses, vegan businesses specifically, and week 5 I just finished, which was some vegan clothing brands. And, you know, there's a common theme that a lot of these people at university or via a spouse or something like that, they watch one of the documentaries, which I'm in that group as well, longtime vegetarian. And then in 2012 or 2013 is when I watched The Conspiracy and these other ones, and it was like, and plus I was on and off again vegan anyway, but actually watching it and connecting the dots around the dairy, it was like, yeah, okay. And so veganism was like an easy and rather effortless, just anywho. So I've spent the last probably 2 to 3 to 4 weeks kind of touring around the whole southern belt of this country. So like London, back and forth to London, close to Bristol, Exeter, and then down here was, well, I live down here, and so I do all the filming and stuff down here. But I'm going to be doing more tutorials, and I'm really excited about what I've created so far. And oh yeah, the retailers, these business owners, these independent people are just amazing. And the majority of them, like me, they watch a documentary like, I can't do that anymore. And it's a fairly quick transition. And then yesterday's interview by someone named Harrison, he runs his own clothing label called Generation V. And weirdly, without even like knowing each other, Ethics and Gen V had a very similar concept around pioneering their clothing brand regarding like just having a conversation but not in your face. So it's not all vegan for the animal. It's not so obvious. It's like kind of cool. Generation V. Oh, what's that? Let me tell you. So, and then what Harrison said, which I thought was beautiful, and of course I like react behind the camera being like, that is great, Harrison. But he was like, okay, so the eco reasons, and then, it was a pretty easy, quick transition, and then I learned more, and then I wanted to do more, and then I thought of, he was already a graphic designer, I think, like freelancing and working for a company, but the veganism then started sort of like permeating his existence, and then he was like, I want to do more. And then he just said this, he's like, I actually started the clothing label as a form of activism. And I'm like, brilliant, because this is leading us to week 8, where I pretty much purely talked to you guys about raising awareness and what did we just say? And being an activist, right? And like, you don't have to go take to the streets and like be freeing animals from, although that would be great. And to be honest, I live in the countryside. So whenever I see those big vans, those like vans that the livestock vans, I like, one, surround the van with like love light, because sometimes I start to feel the energy. And then 2, I like, sometimes I do actually visualize like, stop! These animals are free! And like letting them out and like watching them like frolic about in the field, right? Because it just breaks my heart to think of the other, really. And then that brings me to the idea of like how much wastage there is on the planet, and how like our food consumption is totally connected to like our waste issues and our plastic islands that are floating around in the oceans. And so like, it's like all of these like undealt with, it's like, so, and this is like a simple, possibly oversimplified, but also quite accurate in my awareness. So I talk about the karmic backlog in the Fearless Life Guide. That's literally how I see the plastic and the waste and the trash issues. It's like all of our own unresolved fucking karma, all of our own unresolved issues, i.e., which is like the people who won't watch the documentaries. Those are the people that get me. I'm going on a bit of a rant, by the way. It's like, they're like, why are you vegan? How do you get your protein? I don't mean to take the piss, but I am. How do you get your protein? Oh no, I need meat, and da 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 da. And you're like, okay, like, I would encourage you to watch a couple of these documentaries. Oh no. And I'm like, how come? Like, oh. And like, and this is like, and I'm sure I've talked about this before because it's like my main deal. I'm like, straight up, if you can go kill a creature, if you can actually watch slaughter on mass slaughter, if you can actually watch the mass slaughter that takes place and be totally fucking cool with eating your hamburger at Mackie D's, then fine. However, people who are in alignment with veganism, it's because they face it. They face the reality of their like consumption world, blind consumption world, and they go, oh my God, like I can't be a part of that. And so what irks me are the people who like, oh no, like I don't want to know. I just want to go to Mackie D's and have my hamburger. I just want to continue playing by the status quo rules, which are potentially just fucking destroying us, right? And that's, again, that's like where I loop back into all this like entitled privilege stuff. It's like, oh no, I don't want to look at it. I'm like, but you're fucking eating, so you're eating the steak on your table and like playing all the, oh yeah, but then you won't even face the pain. It's like the same about the disparity of like our ability to not face shit, like feel it. Honestly, I swear to God, and this is like hard, you guys know, compassionate empath. It's like, I remember as I really started to be transforming all the density and like get on mesh, like full-time commitment on the mesh, I realized like I just didn't have the guilt, this underlying privilege guilt anymore. I look homeless people, I look like when I'm traveling around the world in Morocco or Bali or places where people might appear to be living in less opulence or less privilege, even though they're like way happier usually, or at least more peaceful, calm, centered people. Although that's changing. But like, yeah, I don't feel guilty anymore. Like, I don't feel guilty because my life is in centered mish. My life is in my life is in alignment with my heart, which means it's in alignment with the heart of the earth, in alignment with the heart of all. So I don't have this weird hidden guilt around the poor people over there because I'm trying to pretend like they don't exist. Or just being like, just give them charity. And the issue is that when you start to do a little digging, you realize it's all connected. That's why I shine light like this. It's not about making people feel bad. It's about getting people to be really real about like, I want everyone to live well. That's the thing about this. It's not about being like, the material people can't have the material world. They can't have, like, they can. I want all the people to have all the things they want. I want people to enjoy life. I'm someone in that kind of middle ground of like, I am not somebody who can just blindly enjoy opulence and privilege and stuff and just keep shopping and da-da-da-da. That never filled me because I was quite early on aware of like, why? And like when you start to look at that and you start from a solution mindset, holy shazbot, are there layers and layers and layers? And then you get to this day and you're like realizing that some of the most basic things that we just assumed were the way, i.e. love and marriage. You're just gonna get married one day and then off you go. You're happily ever after, all done. That some of the most kind of like basic and fundamental aspects of our human reality that we just assume are like, that's how it works. It's worth a little noodle. That's all. That's all. It's just worth a noodle, you guys, because one, I think a lot of us are in different like parts of the world. Two, it's just holding space for distance and unknown, because that's something as well as far as making connections and falling in love with people in different parts of the world. But when you're open in the heart love vibrashe, you're like, anything is possible, right? I'm just aware of like outworking the kind of potential of like versus the grounded reality of how do we, and this is my thing as well, because I really appreciate these new people and these new relationships in my life. And then I'm aware of like different varying energies, but then I'm like, but wait, does it have to be that? And like, could it be like this? And could it feel like this? And could it work like this? And could we all blah, 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 blah. And I guess that's part of my excitement for sharing this, even though it might seem like you're just rambling on. But it makes me excited because I feel like this is like a big piece of us like being able to fully create, because we can now talk honestly about our inner desires, which a lot of us were taught to shame. See, 30 minutes, and I'm pretty sure yesterday was like 30 minutes, and then my throat is like, stop talking. Stop talking, you're aggravating me. So I need to like have some rest, and then I will also be editing, hopefully, all of the interviews. So feel free to, I'll publish a couple via All to Love, but I'll also be promoting them on Instagram and Facebook. So guys, feel free to check over on the Insta. So if you guys want to book sessions, feel free. And check out Alta Vegan Love as a course. Go over to altalove.com and pre-order it if you're interested in having a vegan journey with Alta Love, and that's an 8-week online course. So yeah, the spring energies are picking us up slowly. Wowzers, what a year as far as like really seeing, shining down, transforming, and clearing out past energies, low vibrational density energies, which has been coming, and I know a lot of us are still in the thick of it, but I'm just gonna give you a big love heart and have it sprinkle love juice all over you. And trust. And this is the thing about dealing with our own pain, dealing with our own anger, dealing with our own emotional stuff. It's never about the other. And this is where I'm very aware of us not getting too obsessive or fixated on labels when it comes to people's behavior, because no matter what, we can slam labels on other people, but we're the ones attracting it. We're the ones facing it. We're the ones. So, you know, the empath really, and I gotta say there's usually a lot of density and kind of often kind of weird protective things going on that make us even be able to face that in the first instance. So I'm aware of just sharing with you guys, and but yeah, do book a session. I tend to kind of, I can share so much, but then at some point the booking the booking has to take place. And then yeah, check out the online courses. Just feel free. Oh, and plus a couple of you guys have been contributing, and I really appreciate that. And I'd like to open it more. I do a monthly column for something called, or bi-monthly column for Badass Unleashed, Badassery Unleashed magazine. And now I'm opening Alta Love to have guest bloggers and stuff, because I'm the creative content of these online courses has been really kind of focusing all of my energy, so it's really nice to have the apparition of other bloggers and stuff like that, or contributors, come along and write some beautiful pieces. Write some beautiful pieces for Alta Love, which I really, really appreciate. So I think that's all, you guys. Just a little bit of a noodle fest for you. I'm still shining light for my throat, and you know, it's sometimes the words just don't do it no justice as far as like the experience we're having. But weirdly, as much as there's a lot of perceived confusion, chaos, I think we're writing it out quite well. I think that there's a lot of support here for us, again, invisibly, so making the leap, it's going to be a little easier than we initially think. Okay, my nose is dripping. My nose is dripping. I'm burping all over you guys. So I'm going to call her quits right there. I hope that that was useful to you. Maybe even a little